This is ABC 12's Newsmaker.
Alrighty, it's time to sort your receipts, grab your W-2, and find out how much interest you paid last year on your mortgage. It's time to file your taxes! Yay! Today on Newsmaker, what you need to know before you tackle that paperwork or go to the tax preparer. First, there are some big changes in how you will prepare your state return thanks to changes in Michigan's tax laws. Find out why you may not be able to claim certain charitable donations this year, and if the so-called fiscal cliff will make a difference in how you file. Then, what you need to take to your tax preparer. We'll make sure you are ready when you walk through that door. And finally, we'll look toward the future and talk about your overall financial health. What can you do to make sure your money is safe and secure? I'm Leslie Toldo. It's a half hour of fun and information you won't want to miss. Stick around. Our tax preparation Newsmaker starts in just a moment. Welcome to our special Happy Tax Season edition of Newsmaker. This tax season is especially nerve-wracking because there's so much change in the air, especially in the wake of the fiscal cliff. That debate got a lot of us wondering where we're going to stand this year with our taxes. When it comes to filing taxes for the 2012 year, the changes have less to do with the fiscal cliff outcome. In fact, for most of us here in Michigan, the biggest changes this year will be to our state taxes. And our first guest today is Michelle Gallagher. She's a member of the Michigan Association of CPAs and the owner of Gallagher and Associates in Lansing. And Michelle, let's dive right in because this is so fun and talk about the key changes this year to our deductions on our state income taxes. And the property tax credit has changed significantly this year, making that credit no longer available not to everyone, but to many Michigan taxpayers. Who's affected and how bad is the hit?
Well, many people are going to find a big impact on the property tax credit this year. The big hit is who's going to be hit the hardest are people, the middle class, the Joe taxpayers. Historically, there have been income phase-outs and income limitations over $80,000. Now the credit is going to be reduced to those making under $40,000 to $50,000. So that cuts out a lot of people. Another big change that's happening with the credit is if your taxable value of your home is more than $135,000, you're going to be ousted out of the property tax credit no matter what. So even if somebody has a bad year or maybe a senior has some low income and they're under the $40,000 to $50,000 income, if their house taxable value is over $135,000, they're out of luck. The tax credit's gone for them. Historically, the credit's been up to $1,200, and people are used to getting this refundable credit, $1,200 check in the mail from the state, and that's no longer going to be coming to them for, I'd say, a bulk of our taxpayers here in Michigan.
And when you say phase out, that to me puts in mind, well, if it already started with one group and it's moved to this group, does that mean there's more on the way? Well,
the phase out means if your income is between $40,000 to $50,000, the credit keeps reducing more and more and phases the credit out. Once you reach $50,000 of income, actually it's called total household resources, but most people would say income. But if you are at $50,000, it's phased out entirely. So there's a little range of credit phase out between the 40 and 50, but once you hit $50,000 or your taxable value is over $135,000, no more credit for you.
Oh, wow. And because a lot of us greatly benefit from our charitable deductions we use every year, some of those will not be allowed on our state returns either. Is that true?
That's right. That's another credit that is gone now in 2012. There were wonderful credits for public contributions, community foundations, homeless shelters, food banks, all those sorts of things. And I've had clients over the years have $500, $600 in credits that now are just simply gone.
We can still use this on our federal.
That's right. The federal has not changed at all in the charity, and a lot of people have asked that question. So hopefully folks were still charitable in 2012 to those types of organizations in getting the federal deduction. Just Michigan isn't going to give you the extra kick this year.
Now, I've almost had a nervous breakdown trying to figure out the charitable deductions on the state return anyway. You start looking at the book and I get all panicky and itchy and stuff. So is it going to be explained a little better in the book this time so people are going to know what things are changed?
Well, you'll notice on the form when you go to file it this year, the Michigan form in particular, there is no section to take a credit anymore, where historically there's been, if you've made a community foundation, how much was it, here's your credit. It's gone entirely, so people won't see it, which will, many people will ask the question, hey, wait a minute, where'd my credit go? They'll also find when they go to add up that final number at the end and their refund isn't as much, they'll go back to their return last year and think, now, how come I got that last year and not this year? And they'll realize that those charitable credits and also the property tax credits just simply aren't there for them.
That's going to hurt. That is going to hurt. And now, there is another area of concern here, especially in our community. There are a lot of retirees. Pensions are now taxable. Is this affecting everyone who gets a pension?
It doesn't impact everyone, and it depends on your birthday. So if anybody was born before 1946, no change at all. You have no impact. If you were born between 1946 and 1952, you're impacted slightly. If you're a joint filer, $40,000 of your pension will not be taxed in Michigan, but over that will. If you're a single filer, it's $20,000. So if your birthday's in that 46 to 52 year, you do have a little bit of leeway. And then if you were born after 1952, your entire pension is now going to be taxable in Michigan.
Wow.
It's always been on federal, but Michigan has always had an exclusion for pensions, and this has really impacted our seniors and our retirees. And they have not been quiet about it.
No, we have heard some of that, and I think a lot of those taxpayers are going to be prepared mentally for this, but it's still going to be a painful time to file. Now, this fiscal cliff debate, I even hate saying the term because everyone is so tired of hearing about it, but it seemed to have everyone on edge. Even those changes are not going to impact the returns that we filed this year, though, right?
In 2012, they are not going to be impacted. There was some compromises made that essentially extended all the goodies that everybody got historically into 2012. So the fiscal cliff debate really didn't impact the way people will file their 2012. In fact, many of the things they extended permanently, so hopefully we don't have to hear too much about some of those things in the future. But for 12, not a whole lot to worry about with the fiscal cliff.
Okay, and other than the payroll or Social Security tax increase, that takes a little bite out of the bottom line, the take-home pay for a lot of people. But how will that change? How will changes due to that final compromise affect the average taxpayer?
Really, the fiscal cliff is not going to impact most taxpayers. Probably the top 2 to 5% of American taxpayers. The biggest compromise that hit the average taxpayer, the worker, is the payroll tax hit. And people are feeling it. You've been hearing it because it came out of their first paychecks in January. So it's a 2% increase in your payroll tax for all the workers in America. And even someone who makes $50,000, that's $1,000 out of their pocket that they got to pay in now. So that one really hit everybody. On the flip side of it, all of the high income taxpayers are going to, starting in 2013, pay much more in tax. Their income tax is going up. There's Obamacare taxes that are impacting folks. And for the most part, they're not impacting people unless they're making over $450,000. So really not impacting the bulk of America, but certainly a lot of people.
Well, Michelle Gallagher, thank you so much for coming in today. You've been very helpful and very informative for us today. Now, taxes are just one of those things that make us nervous, and visiting an accountant, much less doing the returns ourselves, can be unbelievably stressful. There are some things you can do to make that experience better. Our next expert has some tips for you and offers some hope and comfort if you owe the IRS this year. Stay with us. Welcome back. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Tax season. Tax returns are enough to give anyone the heebie-jeebies, but there are some things you can do to take some of the fear out of filing. Jeff Sabalish of Lewis and Knopf of Fenton, also a member of the Michigan Association of CPAs, is here to help ease our minds, aren't you, Jeff?
Absolutely,
Isn't that
Leslie.
you're the calming influence here?
That we are.
All right. Well, first things first. If you're going to have your returns done by a professional, what do you bring along?
Well, it's really an ongoing process throughout the course of the year, Leslie. You know, first and foremost, if you're using a new preparer, you've got to bring in last year's return. But, you know, as the tax forms lead us through, that's the information you bring along. If you have wages, you bring your W-2. If you have interest income, dividend income, you have to bring your 1099s. If you have mortgage interest that you pay in, your 1098s. Detail about your charitable contributions, so on and so forth. Anything that's really common sense that the taxpayer would need to prepare their return. But like I say, it's an ongoing process, so it's best to start throughout the course of the year.
That's what I was going to ask you. Are there certain things that so when you get your tax stuff back after you file, you want to hang on to that return and keep it somewhere where you remember where it is, so you're not saying where the heck is. Maybe keep a file. What are some things, other types of receipts that you want to keep in that file?
Well, receipts that you can keep in there. Medical expenses. Okay, it may not apply to everybody, but at least us as a tax preparer need a starting point to determine if they'll help you out at the end of the year. Things that people often forget are the license plates fees that they pay. The fees to the tax preparer are potentially deductible. Again, anything you see on your tax return from one year to the next is something typically we're going to need to prepare the return in the next year.
Okay. Now, just like, you must love the way that I'm wording these things, because I'm comparing it to getting a shot or taking a test or swallowing medicine. We tend to put off our taxes till as close to April 15th as possible. Even if you're pretty sure you will owe, should you just go ahead and get this stuff done early?
Then it's over with, Leslie. You know, just like getting a shot, then it's over with. Okay, the longer you wait, the longer you have to think about it. Okay, but if you think you're going to owe, you should have your taxes prepared as soon as possible for a couple of reasons. I mean, one is you can plan on getting the money together to pay it in by April 15th, and different circumstances apply to different taxpayers. But if you owe money, the potential is out there that you'll owe penalty and interest. So if you can head that off or stop that clock from ticking, you may want to get it done, or you would want to get it done earlier, just so you know.
And if you have that done earlier, and a lot of preparers and CPAs are filing these things electronically, if you do that, does that mean you have to pay up when the paperwork is done?
It doesn't mean you have to pay up when the paperwork's done, Leslie. You know, commonly we say the payments are due April 15th. Okay, that's when they're due, okay, but technically they're due throughout the course of the previous year is when they're due. Okay, so if you owe money, again, there is exposure to potential penalties that are out there. Each circumstance is a little bit different.
Okay, and if you do owe and you don't have that money ready by April 15th, are they going to come cart you off to the tax prison?
No, they might. No, they won't. You can enter installment agreements, Leslie, okay? At the federal level and the state level, they work a little bit differently. They work a little bit differently depending upon the amount of money you owe. Between, you know, if it's less than $10,000, the rules work one way. If it's between $10,000 and $25,000, they work a different way. $25,000 and $50,000, so on and so forth. Okay, so absolutely, it's okay to enter an installment agreement.
And now, so it's not risky to do that. They're not like, hey, this guy has a history of trouble. It's not like you're been pegged as a tax-paying risk.
Well, I guess that depends on how you define risk, but it's not risky. You're just getting your tax obligation taken care of, and especially in our economy over the last few years, Leslie, we have seen this more and more and more as tax preparers, where people are just trying to take care of their household needs, and unfortunately the last person in line is the government, and we see the necessity for them, the taxpayer, to have to enter installment agreements.
Now, another thing, I've heard people say that you can't enter into those types of agreements with the state. But in light of, especially what Michelle was talking about so many of the changes, people could be hit a little harder this year. will the state also do installment agreements?
They'll do installment agreements. The process is a little bit different there. You'll get some notices beforehand, and you'll eventually get one that says a final notice for back taxes due. Then you go through a process of entering an installment agreement with them. And again, with them, it's different rules depending upon the amount of money you owe.
Now, every now and then you'll see one of these commercials come on, and it'll be somebody saying, what if your tax preparer did a bad job, and bring all your old tax returns for however long, and we'll look at it and we can get you more money back, and all this kind of stuff. Is that worth doing?
Well, second opinions are worthwhile, okay? If you as the taxpayer have some sort of sense or some sort of hint that, yeah, I didn't like that, okay? There was something that I think they missed. The key is finding a person that will ask the right questions, the person that knows your situation, to know what deductions may be available to you. One thing that I'll recommend, Leslie, is to find a quality preparer, is to look at our professional association's website, and that's the website of the Michigan Association of Certified Public Accountants, and that's at michcpa.org, okay? And there's a link on there for consumer resources. And not only will it let you find a CPA or tax preparer in your area, I mean, our website's geared towards CPAs, but in direct answer to your question, if you don't think something's right, yeah, why not get a second opinion? In some cases, the facts are the facts. In other cases, there are things that the previous preparer may have missed.
Okay, Jeff Sabolish, thank you for coming on. A lot of good information you passed along here today. Now, suppose you owe on your taxes and you're panicked. That may be a sign of a bigger issue with money management, and this is not just the start of a new tax year. It could be the start of a new way of managing your finances. Doesn't that sound hopeful? Stick around for some no-nonsense advice from a certified financial planner who offers tips to take the panic out of taxes and other financial emergencies. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Newsmaker. We hope you're feeling a little relaxed about this tax season now. But if you owe and you're worried, it could be a sign of a bigger problem with your overall money picture. And joining us today to help us sort that out and to offer some advice to help us all get and stay financially healthy is Keith Harder. He's a certified financial planner with Raymond Group in Saginaw. And the last segment, we talked about people working out payment arrangements with the state and or the IRS if that's necessary. Is that better? Is it better to keep them completely out of it and maybe use a credit card to pay our taxes?
Well, the most important thing is you need to get your obligations taken care of, and you need to make payments. Probably best to enter into an arrangement with the IRS simply because the interest rates are likely to be lower and much lower than what you would be assessed on your credit card balances.
So it's more of a bottom line. You're going to end up paying a lot back more to a credit card company than you would be
Right.
to the IRS. Now, if someone is fretting about possibly owing and considering a deal with the IRS or even a little putting their taxes on a credit card, does that send up a red flag to you?
It certainly could. It's a sign that people did not anticipate. Maybe they aren't as involved with their financial situation. They aren't prepared for things. Certainly there can be some changes to the tax code, as we heard about earlier, that can change your liability situation. But being prepared and having the means to pay the taxes begin for most people if they're wage earners through their withholding. So it's a matter of looking and seeing, do I have the appropriate amount of taxes withheld from my paycheck? If you're a self-employed individual, really requires a good bit of discipline, saying my income is only part of what I get to spend. I have to set aside some on a regular basis to make sure that I'm meeting my tax liabilities.
And setting aside some, saving, is something we should probably all be doing anyway. And is that a good way to avoid some of this terror?
Absolutely. One of the fundamental principles in financial planning is to have an emergency reserve, to have some savings for a rainy day. And we're all aware that the earnings on a savings account isn't very much now, so it seems like the money is very idle, but it serves a very important purpose, unexpected expenses. While the name is unexpected, it happens to everyone. At some point in our lives, we always have expenses that we didn't anticipate. And so it is a mechanism for being prepared for those events, whether it's a tax bill that we didn't anticipate, or something happens to our car, or the furnace in our home goes out. If we're relying on turning to some form of debt, credit card or whatever, to handle those situations, it's going to end up costing us a lot more in the long term. And as a financial planner, and encouraging people to really broaden their outlook and look beyond just this moment in time, preparing taxes or this year, it's really looking at your whole lifespan and what are my needs today and in the future.
And how much money what should we have saved in just a savings account? Not talking about a 401k, but this rainy day or emergency fund.
General rule of thumb is to have 3 to 6 months of household expenses. It's going to depend on a little bit, do you have 2 wage earners in the home or 1? That's a general rule of thumb.
Okay, and most people will say, hey, I'm stretched too thin to try and do something like that, to try and save a few months worth of living expenses. How do you get there?
It's not, don't be overwhelmed by the big number. In other words, if I do the math and figure that my household expenses are $3,000 a month and multiply that by 6, that's $18,000. Oh my goodness, how am I going to get there? You've got to start one step at a time. Set a goal that might be, I want to achieve that emergency reserve level in a 2-year period. Well, now you divide it out and say, how much every month or every paycheck do I need to set aside in this emergency fund? And break it down into smaller, more manageable steps.
And you hear people say a lot of times, you should pay off any debt that you have, meaning revolving debt, not necessarily your mortgage payment or something like that. Maybe you'll still have a car payment, but pay all that extra debt off before you start to save. Good idea?
Not necessarily. Certainly, paying off your debt should be one of your financial goals over the long term. But I never say all or nothing. I think it's good to do some savings in conjunction with paying down your debt. One of those means might be utilizing your retirement plan through work, especially if there's an employer match. It means that you're magnifying those savings. You're really putting your hard-earned dollars to their best purpose. If you're able to utilize that, get a matching contribution and do some savings. It takes a lot of discipline because you have to manage your savings, your debt payment, and your personal living expenses. And you've got to sort of get a good handle on where all of those pieces are.
And are there some resources available for people? Because some people say I can't afford a financial planner, or they can't afford this and can't afford that. Are there resources available for people to really get their ducks in a row financially?
Well, there certainly are a number of resources, and I would certainly advocate for a professional financial planner, a professional advisor, somebody with a lot of expertise. There are other resources. There are community resources. There are through churches, friends and family.
Keith Harder, thanks for joining us today. We're out of time. If you want more information on taxes, tax season, or any of the topics that we talked about here today on Newsmaker, you'll want to go to abc12.com and look for it under the See It on TV section. We are out of time for today's Newsmaker. Thank you and all of our guests for joining us today.